Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com.
Trust is a huge part of leadership. If you don't have it on your team, it's really hard to build and takes a lot of time. It's kind of like changing a culture. Trust has so many components that you have to think about, okay, and it's unique for every team. You know, where does trust need to be built? Is it with me? So is it with a team member? Is it, I've got a new manager? For me, the journey has been, I was in HR, as most people that have been listening for any period of time have known. I shifted to the city manager's office into a managing director, kind of similar to an ACM type role. And so that shift, although I've known the people, I have 4 departments now reporting to me: HR, IT, airport, and general services, which is fleet and facilities. So while I know the people well, I didn't know the industry. And so when I talked to Cheryl about this, I said, here's my path, here's my goal.
Cheryl being your boss.
Cheryl being my deputy city manager, number 2, essentially. And I told her my goal is to just build trust with the teammates, go out. And I told the directors the same thing. I said, I'm here. I just want you to know I've got your back. I'm going to learn about your business because I know you personally, but I need to learn about the business so I can best support you and your team. And then I've gotten out to the teams to meet their managers, to go tour their facilities, et cetera. So trust looks different to every leader depending on where they are at in their journey and what the circumstances are in their teams. Trust, what it might look like. Tasha's our new HR director, came from Mansfield and was with me before. It might look totally different to her in the HR department as a new director coming in and what she might have to build. Mark DeVita is our airport director. He has been there a long time. Trust may be perfect, but he got a new team member. His longtime operations guy retired, and he has a new incoming member. So again, in each of your roles, where you're at in your leadership and the teams before you, whether they've been there a long time, trust may be there. But trust is ever evolving, and it takes so many pieces. And I've also seen it can destruct quickly. You have a cancer in your organization, or cancer on your team, I can see that break down just as fast, or it could be a hidden killer. You just do not know what is going on behind the scenes till it surfaces way later. I've seen all those happen. But trust is something you have to look at it as a leader, because that's kind of step 1 to getting to have a high-performing team. They need to trust you and your leadership and know you have their best interest at heart.
What have you found some of your biggest challenges to that?
Most importantly for me, it was just around understanding what is going on, listening to my people. Really, it just comes down to me asking questions about what's going on in their world, what their issues and challenges are, and then providing guidance, and hopefully sound guidance on approaches that they can take to help them through whatever the issues are. And this is not just now, this is my lifelong leadership journey. It is always about understanding the issues in front of your team members and then supporting them through that with patience, with kindness. It's the outpour, how you approach it, that is really critical. Because if they come to you with an issue and you're reactive, you're emotional, you jump to a conclusion, or you tell them this is what we're going to do, or don't do that again, they're less likely to come to you. So trust is all in how you react to a challenge and how you react, especially in I call it a crisis, that will build that trust, and then consistency in your actions. You have to be the same you, no matter the circumstance. and they have to see that strength and fortitude and commitment as you move through it.
Are you more prone to easily give trust? Seems to me that you are.
Yeah, my approach is always, I assume trust until you break it.
And other people may be wired very differently. You know, they may be.
I have faith.
I'm not going to give it until you work like crazy to earn it. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to give it when I don't know. I try to give it first, and then if it breaks, then I kind of hone in, okay, on what happened and why. But I'm also, those that know me, I'm a genuine, straightforward soul. I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to say you broke trust. I'm just going to say, listen, this didn't go well. This was not in the path that I had hoped we were moving. How do you feel? This is how I feel. This has got to be repaired. And this is going to take time now. I mean, they'll know their position.
I think that's an interesting point, though, you know, you giving it first. I would propose that if you're going to be a good or great leader, you've got to do that. If you're not willing to give the trust first, good luck becoming a really good or great leader. And that's hard. I think that's harder for some than others, to extend trust even when it hasn't been earned. New team member comes on board, vetted them, been through multiple interviews, got a pretty good read on who they are, but you really don't know them. So they come on the job and you trust them. I would propose that you try, that you do.
That's right.
That you demonstrate that leadership and you trust them right out of the gate. My argument would be, what's the downside to that?
Yeah. And
there is no downside. The downside is, okay, that trust could be broken. Trust could be broken no matter what. No matter what you do, the trust could still be broken. So to give them,
trust can be broken after working with somebody for 20 years.
That's exactly right. So to give them the best opportunity to succeed right out of the gate, you know, again, be the leader, be the first. I have found, I would insert one word into the conversation here, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are, and that's vulnerability. In my own leadership journey, my willingness to do two things, and they really dovetail to me into one big thing, and that is to extend trust first, is my willingness to be vulnerable, my willingness to share enough insights, personal, professional, whatever, to show this person, to demonstrate to this person that I trust them. Which means, we talk about safe spaces, and psychological safety is a big buzzword, especially in the HR world, and rightfully so. And all it means is what I say won't be held against me. Mm-hmm. It's just the opposite of the Miranda rights that law enforcement reads. You know, everything you say and
can and will be held.
Yeah, you know, and what if we operate in our workplaces to try to achieve high-performing cultures in a different fashion where you're safe with me? I'm not going to browbeat you. I'm not going to beat you over the head with everything that you divulge, or even the mistakes that you may make, because we all make them. None of us are going to be perfect. Vulnerability.
Well, and don't mistake that, what Randy just said. Don't mistake that for being weak or being not holding somebody accountable, because you can still be vulnerable as a leader, but hold them accountable. Like if they come to you, we talk about psychological safety, and they tell you something and it's clearly wasn't the right approach or clearly wasn't the right action to take. You just don't have to, like you said, you don't have to beat them down. You just need to say, okay, what went well in that circumstance and what didn't go well? And you can get to agreement on I agree with you. That part didn't go well. How could we have done it differently? And then you can also coach in that same moment of, that's what I'm looking for. Let's, on the next instance that occurs, let's try this different approach, see if that works better for us. And it's us, not.
Do you think people misconstrue? You think it's a widespread, and it may be, worth thinking about. Do you think there's a widespread notion that trust and vulnerability mean a softness, mean a lack of accountability?
I don't know if if it's widespread, but I feel that sometimes, well, I feel and I've seen sometimes that leaders want to gain the trust of the people, so they don't necessarily want to correct them. They listen and they're like, "Man, I just wouldn't have done it that way." And when I ask them, "Would you talk about that?" and they're like, "No, because I don't want to break them down." And they were really trying hard, but you have to. Again, it's about serving them. We are not serving them well if we are not addressing and helping them maybe see a different way. There's we've talked about it, a million ways to skin a cat, as they say. It doesn't have to be your way, but you should still guide them in thought to ensure it's aligning with. We just did a previous podcast when we talked about, know the way, show the way, and go the way. If you're trying to show them, hold to the principles that you believe to be of high value in your culture, in your organization, and what you expect, and then teach that to them through their practices. And as they're coming to you, they obviously trust you. Talk about those things, and then help them see, okay, what if we tried this? They're likely going to say, "Oh yeah, I can do that," or "I don't think that's going to work." And through that dialogue, it's going to help them navigate these better next time. Talking about executing things exceptionally well, if you just let it roll because you don't want to hurt their feelings and you want them to feel like it's a safe place to come, you're really not serving them as a leader. That's not a strong leader. You need to be able to willingly help them navigate those things well and show them an alternative way if that's not exactly how you wanted that to look. But you also have to recognize they're in the moment. Hindsight's 2020. It's sometimes hard to navigate that well in the moment, but you can encourage it, and through life experience, hopefully they become a better them tomorrow than they were today through you guiding their thought and helping show them what you expect from them so that they become better.
So as you listen to these stories and a leader admits that somebody comes and they recount something that happened and the leader's thinking, well, I wouldn't have done that, but they don't say anything. And they don't say anything. Where does that play in this conversation about trust? They don't want to use that information that was just shared to correct the person. What do you think's going on there?
Well,
because to me that seems like
it's not fully open trust.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a completely appropriate. I would propose the wisest of times to insert something that could make a monumental difference for this person, where they could see, yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't see it that way. And so we sit there in silence, thinking that silence is going to cement the trust. I challenge that.
Yeah. I've got a chart in front of me, and it kind of has these components, and it's really interesting because trust is in the middle, and we can post it, but it's got a bunch of blocks that go around with these words, and it never stops. It doesn't like start and go back and then point to the middle, like, okay, you finished.
Right.
But one of the things we've talked about is in here, it talks about, and there's no particular order. You can start at any one of these components, but it talks about sincerity. So trust is in the middle, and it has sincerity, reliability. We've all probably seen this: commitment, integrity, competence, and consistency. Consistency to me is key. And sincerity. You have to listen to what they're saying. This is just great communication and trust, period, is listening to what your team member is bringing to you. They're bringing it to you for a reason. They're proud about what they did. It was a good interchange, or they're coming to you because something didn't go as well as they had hoped, and they're sharing it with you. Maybe hoping, okay, I need insight on how to handle this. A great example when we're talking about trust is you have a team member that comes to you and says, "Hey, I need to talk. There's a challenge. Do you have time?" I have seen leaders say, "Really don't have time right now. Really don't have time. Can you come back?"
Bad move.
Bad move. I share with my leaders, anytime you have somebody that comes to you and say, "Hey, do you have time?"
Make time.
Now the answer can be, can you give me 5 minutes? I need to shift something. I've got a meeting. Let me see if I can shift that so I have time, because you've got to show value. They have just come to you. It's obviously urgent enough, because this doesn't happen often. You don't have people dropping in every 5 minutes saying, can I talk to you?
No, you seize those moments.
Yes, you've got to seize them and make time. So that's step one. If they come to you and say, you need to talk, of course, let me close my door. Or if it's on Teams, do you need me to get somewhere private? Those are the first things I always ask. Because if it's a problem that's a work related, like if it's a task related item, they don't say, do you have time? They'll say, hey, I've got a question on civil service.
Right.
Do you have a couple minutes this afternoon?
Well, you know the severity of it when they say, can we talk?
Yeah. Can we talk? I need your help, or something like that. It's bigger. And they have taken the step to come to you, to be vulnerable and trust you, or they wouldn't have come in the first place. And now you need to take that time. That continues, that consistency and that reliability, 2 words on the chart.
Yeah.
Those have become evidence just by them asking. So then you need to listen. And like you said, serving them, they come to you, I've got a problem. Here's what happened. And I always say, well, what are you wanting to do? Because you need to understand what they're, and usually it typically for me has been a reactive, because they're pissed about something. Somebody has hurt a team member's, feelings. It's something usually on a team around people when they ask for help. That's in my experience. Yeah. But I was also in HR. So, does that happen to the planning director? I don't know. But for me in HR, they're coming to help because they need you to help them through it. That's why they're asking in the first place. So I understand, where do you want to go? Then what have you tried? What have you done? Where are we at right now? So you understand where they have gotten to. And then then I just start what we talk about in our leadership recipe all the time, Randy, is I'm curious. What's happened? What's the impact? What do you think should be done? Because you're showing trust in them to establish what have you tried without judgment. And then understanding, okay, I always give them options. Here's some options. And my famous words are, because they'll say, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, can you do that? Yes. Should you do it? Those are the 2 questions I always pose. Should you do that? And why or why not? And we kind of dialogue around that. And almost always I tell them to sleep on it. Let's sleep on it unless it's critical, unless somebody's going to get hurt, right? Or is hurt. Obviously, you're going to handle those at a priority. But if you can sleep on it and think about things, usually that brings our mind back down to what was our, it's always this, know the way, show the way, go the way. Okay, what were you trying to do? And does this align with that? Because that's what we've told them. So we need to make sure, does it align to build that trust? You have told them what you expect. Is this aligning? Are you demonstrating what you're preaching? Right? Are you walking the talk? And so as we go through that consistency and application, they have to visibly see it. That's going to continue building trust. And now they're looking at me. When they come to me for help, my reaction has to be consistent for all my team members, because they will end up talking. And the only thing I can encourage in leadership, Randy and I've talked about this a lot, is being your genuine self. I always try to become better. I always try to improve upon things, but I have to lean into me and be the same me. Under stress, I have to recognize that, okay, that is not what I would have done, but I've got to have this same tone the entire conversation, under stress, under pressure, in good times, when I've got 90 things I need to have done in the next hour. They need to not feel that. As we're building trust, I've got to be sincere and I've got to be reliable, and I have to have a commitment to what I have expected from them and they expect from their teams, and help them reach that all of those components are what builds trust in those moments of need when they come to me for help.
Yeah. And when you say that, that's Lisa's personality. And so there's all kinds of personalities that watch our show and listen to our show. And Lisa and I share a ton of things. I would say mostly philosophically and mostly in our worldview. I think we are very aligned in those things. But personality-wise, we're different. We're alike in the sense that we're direct. But I'm perfectly happy and willing to, in some moments, demonstrate probably way more animation than Lisa, which doesn't come across in this podcast because it's out of context. And sometimes for effect, sometimes because people need to understand the severity of a decision that may have gone poorly or performance that wasn't up to par, so they understand the significance of it. So
yeah, certainly depends on what had occurred.
Exactly, but all of this means is for you to be you, because you hear us say that over and over. You got to lean into who you are and your personality. Otherwise, you're going to have to come to work and you're going to have to put on a facade every single day. I think it's ineffective, not to mention it's exhausting.
The caveat to that is if there's areas like in crucial conversations that you have been encouraged to improve, don't keep leaning into the same you. Does that make sense? If they said you need to tell them you need to do X, Y, and Z, and you keep just avoiding that, you need to be the improved version of yourself, but lean into your style, lean into yourself, right?
Well, and that's my point. Because now that you're at this position in the hierarchy, you're seeing things at a higher level.
Right.
You're a different personality than the person that you report to.
Right.
The way that she would do things are not necessarily going to be the way. That doesn't mean they don't get accomplished. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it can look different. I think sometimes leaders, especially aspiring leaders and young emerging leaders, think that there is a way stylistically, personality-wise, to do things, and that if I don't have that personality, that's really what I'm getting to. I don't want people listening to us thinking, I have to adapt my personality. If I'm going to be a high-performing leader, then I've got to be this stoic. No, you don't. If that's not who you are, that's not who you need to be. I'm a very stoic person, but I'm also super competitive. And if performance goes poorly, when I have faith and confidence and trust, which is the topic, and we've kind of scattershot here, and I trust that you could do this because you've done this before. I've seen you do this before, and now you don't. I'm going to look very different than I look right now on camera. I promise you, I'm going to look different. And it's not going to be contrived. It's going to be because I've got so much trust and faith that you could have done a better job. You didn't do a good job. This was a crap job that you did. And yeah, might that look like getting in your face a little bit? Probably. Now here's the rub with me. I also know that being in the doghouse, we got to let people up. We can pin people's shoulders to the mat, but we got to let them up. And better yet, we got to help them up. Because the last thing I need is some defeated person leaving my presence thinking, well, I'm just a worthless piece of, no. That helps.
Well, they're certainly not going to come back.
No, it doesn't help that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
So I sidetracked the conversation. I probably shouldn't have. I just don't want people, because I encounter this pretty regularly, people thinking that there's this one-lane highway that you've got to either get on or get off if you're going to be a good, effective leader. No. I've got to be like Tony Robbins, right? I got to be this boisterous, flamboyant. No, you don't. Or I got to be like Lisa, or I got to be like Randy. No, you don't. There's a million different ways, stylistically, personality-wise, to do this. But at the heart of it all, to bring us back to center, trust and vulnerability have got to be in play. The person has got to trust that you've got their best interest at heart, because you have to have demonstrated that you do.
And you have to keep do it with sincerity. That's right.
You got to keep demonstrating that you've got their best interest at heart. and even up to and including them being out the door. Does it mean they're going to see it? No. Doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily see it. Doesn't mean that they're going to agree with it, but it means that you've still got to do your dead level best, to develop the trust. Because, well, here's the question. So when you lose trust in somebody on your team, how does that go? What happens?
Well, that's the hard part, because you've got to, the thing that stands out to me is you always need to remember you still have the entire team. You're often, 90% of our time, 10% of our people, 90% of your time is spent on 10% of your people, 80-20, whatever your rule is, but you're spending a lot of time on a person that's challenging you than you are on the rest of the team. And I remember Randy saying, flip that. Don't lose sight of your high performers. They should be getting 90% of your time. Spend 10% of your time on the non-performer, because your energy needs to shift. But when when trust is broken, you have to focus on that one person and right the ship. I remember you talking, Randy, when I was going through challenges many years ago. I felt like I was plugging the holes on the ship, and somebody in the back was still digging and punching more holes in it as quickly as they can. And I didn't have, I was like, the ship is still sinking, and I'm trying to plug these holes for the team to keep the team above water. But if you've got one that is destroying what you're trying to accomplish, you have to address that and move forward for the benefit of the team, because otherwise the whole ship is sinking, including you. You're all going down.
And I would say for the benefit of the person poking holes, because a person that gets accustomed to poking holes and they're allowed to do that, that doesn't help them either. If they go to
10 more holes than you can see.
Yeah, and if they get invited on board a new ship and they start poking holes, then they're going to suffer the same fate. Hopefully, a new ship, they don't poke holes in that ship, but they're going to keep poking holes in yours. The punchline for me is, I've demonstrated trust. I've put in the effort. I'm sincere about it. I trust them. They trust me. But something happens over time, whether through poor behavior, usually toxic poor behavior, poor performance.
Yeah, there's a shift or a turn. Yeah.
And now trust is broken. This is where it gets personal. And this is where I think every leader, you've got to decide how long you're willing to live with that. Me, not long.
Yeah.
Not long, for two reasons. One, the collateral damage of those people who are boarding that ship, who don't want to sink, who are doing everything they can to keep it afloat, and we got a saboteur among them. My job, get the saboteur off the boat for their welfare as well as the welfare of the team. So I view it as the only possible winning scenario to play.
Yeah.
So I don't waste time with it. I waste no time.
And the challenge is always, you just got these human factors, and I agree, and I've learned a lot from you, because my weakness is also my strength, which is I invest a lot in people. I want their success. I want their success so badly. I'll give them many chances, and I put a lot of effort into helping them become the best they can be. That is also my weakness, because I can say it for myself. Over my 26 years, there are times I let it go too long. And what I have learned in that, over that same period, is as much as I want them to succeed, it really comes down to their actions. And if you see it multiple times, if they're doing things multiple times that are just like, golly, that didn't seem right, or you hear staff dropping things, or you watch the body language of your team and you're like, that there's something going on, it's usually the tip of the iceberg. The damage is already being done. And it is the what they are leaving in their wake, you have no idea until they're off the ship. And then you realize, you look behind you and see the destruction of the boats that you've hit, the holes that have been in the bottom of the boat you didn't know about.
Well, what you know is plenty bad already.
Yeah. It is always worse. Always. I have never found an instance where I thought, it's pretty minor, but we just need to get them moved, or they leave. it always comes out of the woodwork of leaders going, well, I was told that da da da, and I was following that guide. And you're like, oh my gosh, you don't know, because people have good hearts and they don't want to complain. At least I found that in our city. They just deal with it. They tolerate it. They accept it as it is. They work around it. They just don't. They're thinking, oh, that was just, the policy didn't really say that. Maybe I'll get another opinion, but they don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People's hearts are good and they just don't want to complain. But I'm telling you, when trust is broken and you start getting those moments, it's probably far worse than you can envision.
Yeah, you're further down the road than
you're
further down the road at that point than you think you are. And that's the problem. But I think what you suffered being a person with the kind of heart that you've got, I think that's more common than not, don't you? I think it's common for us to get fixated on, man, I just need to help this person. I need to persuade them. I need to convert them. I need to help them see this. What that does, unfortunately, is it blinds us to this array of other people that are the collateral damage. All of these people who are coming to work every day thinking, why are we putting up with this? And we lose sight of them because we think they're good. I really need to fix this person. And you're not going to fix anybody.
Well, and I have in my experience, here's the challenge for me. I have in my experience, there's been a lot of different circumstances. I've seen great high performers take a turn for some reason, maybe a life circumstance, maybe something just happens in their life. They made a horrible choice and they can't get out of their own way. I've seen that. I've seen people that have been influenced by others for a long period of time. And I've been able to change perspective, gain their trust back over time by this. We talk about consistency and commitment, being the same me. I don't change. Good circumstances, bad. And ultimately they see, okay, all these other people are come and gone that say negative things, but this has been the same person. They start trusting that maybe it wasn't her, maybe it was them, right? So I have seen people come around much less. That is the much less common outcome, right? But I have seen it happen. And it's through life that I think life has guided me that maybe I can change them. Maybe they were hurt in their past. Maybe an employer beat them down.
Yeah, but a lot of that, I think, is understanding of the context. I mean, I've used the illustration. My very first kind of a challenge with that was a young guy, and he found out his wife had been unfaithful. And he goes from being a top performer, high trust, I trust him, he trusts me, to all of a sudden, I still trust him, but I'm like, I'm not trusting what I'm seeing here. Performance just waned big time. Pull him in the office, talk. He breaks down, tells me, okay, now I've got understanding. Now there's a context but that's not a trust issue because I trusted him.
That's a life issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the performance. It's not helping him. It's not helping the company, but I get it. It makes sense. Yeah. And we worked through it. And he came back. He rebounded. That's different to me than a person who, okay,
well, that was through compassion, right?
Yeah, I don't trust
him through the circumstance.
I understood what was going on. That's different than a guy that suddenly just goes from caring to he doesn't care anymore. Now he's just to the wind. I don't care. I'm just here.
Impacting the team.
Yeah, that was
those
not
around them. Yeah.
So many times, though, I think we may. I'm not saying, I don't know how often it happens, but I would encourage anybody watching or listening to us, don't let this happen. Don't forfeit trust because you've connected dots that you're not sure. You think this is what's going on. Have the conversation, find out, get some knowledge, seek some understanding so that you know what's going on. Once you're armed with knowing and understanding, okay, this person, they're toxic. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do what I need done the way I need it done by when I need it done. Game's over.
Or the way in which you want it done.
Yeah, the game's over at that point. Once you understand, just make sure we're going to do. I keep threatening to do this, but we're going to fixate maybe on a few shows evidence-based leadership.
Right.
because it's so critical that we get it right. It's so critical that if we stop trusting somebody, well, think about yourself. It's one thing if you break trust. It's one thing if somebody loses trust in you and you've done nothing. And we've all had that happen in relationships where something went sour and we don't even know what happened.
Right.
We look at our lives and we're like, well, I didn't do anything. I didn't betray them. I didn't do anything to break this trust. But for some reason, they don't trust. And almost in every case, if we can get down to the nitty-gritty, we find out that they assumed something. They saw something. They looked at it.
They were told something.
Yeah, they made a conclusion that was completely incorrect. As leaders, we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to get it wrong when we're dealing with people's careers and lives and our teams. And it's a bad way to run anyway. So don't do that.
And you can't let time pass in those circumstances either. The more time that passes, I assure you, the more destruction is being done. And I can say that because in my experience as a leader, back from, when did I start? Probably 1990, when I graduated from college and started as a young supervisor, not having led before. You learn through life experiences. In hindsight's 2020. In looking back over those experiences, in every case, when I had a gut feeling, I can't put my finger on it, but this is not looking good. I don't trust this person, what they just said. The team is making comments, just random comments. In every case, there was far more destruction in their wake than I realized. And then you're spending an enormous amount of time rebuilding your team and trust and getting things back to a culture you want. That's another year's work in front of you after you've dealt with the initial situation, because so often we just don't want to hurt feelings. We don't want to lose their, we're afraid, well, it's going to really upset them if I have to talk to them about that. What if I made a mistake? Those are the common things that I work through over my time in HR, working with other departments and working with my own department, because team members shift and change. It's never just beautiful and perfect. For any of us. For me, I'm sure me as a team member to somebody else, we had growth. It just happens to everybody. It's part of leadership. But don't let it go long, and address it and make sure, again, in trust, there's consistency. You're reliable. You're committed to what your purpose, what your value, and what you've communicated, and you're holding to that. Because besides the one you need to address, the entire team is watching and relying upon you to save the team.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.